There we go. Recording in progress.
Through the cloud.
Through the cloud, yeah. Yes. Right. So, welcome to Informed to Perform again. Today we have Jin Langstone from Kismet Animal Therapy with us. I'll do a brief introduction and I'll let her correct any bits I've got wrong. So Jin, I've known Jin now for quite a few years. I can't remember. We worked it out the other day, didn't we? How long? So how long is this since the McTimoney course?
14, maybe 13 or 14.
Wow, okay, yeah, quite a long time then. Longer than I ever think it is, I think. Longer than I realise. So Jin is a Master Equine Body Worker which you did through Equinology. Well, it's Equine Energy in this country now, isn't it? But Equinology is the company. She's also a McTimoney animal practitioner, animal therapist, manipulator, whatever various people like to call themselves. I know everyone uses slightly different name to that, and is currently in training to become an osteopath or to use osteopathic techniques.
It's an osteopathic diploma, just
okay.
with equines, and then in the future I can go on and do the full thing, but it'll only be on the animal side anyway.
Yeah, okay. So I met Jin actually because I was originally on the McTimoney program, the degree program, and we had to do an equine massage qualification or an animal massage qualification as part of that, but separate to the McTimoney. And Jin is the one that pointed me in the direction of the Equinology Equine Body Worker qualification that I then did, which I really enjoyed, and I'm very grateful to Jin for pointing me in that direction. So since I then met Jin then started treating her horses and has been treating them ever since, really, I think, which is, yeah, like I said, a lot longer than I think I realised. So
yeah, we must have started the course, 2009, 2010.
Really? Yeah, I guess it was, yeah. So yeah. So about 13, yeah. Somewhere around about 13 years ago. So so I guess firstly, how long have you actually been treating horses? When did you start, or when did you qualify, I suppose, the Master Equine Body Worker or Equine Body Worker, and start using it as your main?
So I went on the first Equine Body Worker course in 2001. I'd been off sick from work actually for 6 months with chronic fatigue syndrome, because I was one of these people that was working and doing horses and working with horses at the weekend where I could, grooming for people, and just basically overdid it for my body. And I was signed off for 6 months at that point, got really good treatment for it, knew how to sort of like do that. And they said, go and find something you really want to do on your way back. And so I just found the massage course and thought, I'll go and do that for the horses, my own horses. That'd be a really nice thing to do. And so that was 2001, and I did the course, and I was just blown away with it at that moment. Just like thought, this is amazing. I just absolutely love it. I went on and then did it part-time. I was going to, I went and did a MSc in equine science. I also went and did my Master Equine Body Worker qualifications, and then in 2003 started actually treating other people's horses, because I was only treating my own for the first 2 years. And then in 2009, because my actual background is I'm a biochemist, and I used to work for biotech companies. And so in 2009, I got the opportunity to walk into my bosses and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go and rub horses for a living, which I think they all thought I was completely nuts. But it was the best thing ever. So I absolutely love what I do. And yeah, it's just been fantastic.
So for anyone who doesn't know, so I think quite a lot of people probably know the McTimoney qualification to some extent, or at least know more about it. For anyone who doesn't know what the Master Equine Body Worker entails, just explain to people exactly what, because I know, obviously, I haven't done it, I haven't gone to do more of the stuff. So I'll give a quick bit of background on the Equinology course I did. Because it sounds like, quite a straightforward thing. It's a 10-day course, the first Equinology massage qualification to become a level 1 equine body worker. Let me tell you, it's the most in-depth 10 days of my life ever, I think, that I've had. The level of knowledge I wanted for anatomy, for insertions, origins, where the muscles go, how the muscle fibers are, etc., was just mind-blowing. I mean, brilliant, really good, and I'm glad it was. But it was, I would genuinely say that out of the master's degree of the McTimoney and the 10-day equinology massage course, which has a huge externship afterwards, it's not just a 10-day course, I felt like I was expected to know more for the equinology stuff than I was for the master's degree. And that's just one bit of it. So now, so that's the first bit of massage that I did. So now if Jin tells you all actually what then is involved in the Master Equine Body Worker.
So you do the basic course, you do the advanced course, which is on massage techniques. You then do biomechanics of the horse. And all of these courses are usually 3 to 5 days plus 6 months follow-up. They're all really intense. Saddle fitting, farriery science, nutrition, horse behavior, just loads of little courses that you go on. You build all of these up together, and then they give you a 3-day exam at the end of it. And in 2003, nobody had done the exam over in Europe for the master one, and there were 4 of us sat to sit it in March, and the other 3 wimped out, so I ended up doing the 3-day exam on my own, which was terrifying. And the others did go on and pass theirs, and there's only a few Master Equine Body Workers in this country, and some of them are now actually have moved and are elsewhere, but and most of them aren't practicing, and that's probably the only one in the UK that's now practicing.
Okay.
And that, but yeah, it was a really intense course, and I think it taught me so much more than the other things, and it also taught me to start looking at that, and then going and doing the MSc in equine science sort of like taught me a lot more about the research in that area as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because obviously that, and especially then going on to do, then following that, the masters in
McTimoney,
which obviously, yeah, I guess having already done the masters for that, like I said, the research and all that side of things of how it all works is always quite a helpful, quite a helpful thing to know about. So, what was I going to say then? What has then led you, and this is actually for my interest really, although we did chat a bit the other day. So what's led you now onto the osteopathic route as well? So obviously you did the Master Equine Body Worker, you've then gone on to do, let's start with that. What then led you to do the McTimoney?
I think because there were lots of courses out there that are massage things, and people sort of like knew that I was a massage person. I was using soft tissue stuff, and it wasn't recognised as at a higher level. And then there's a lot more coming in. Sorry, I've got a dog going by. There we go. Bye. And the McTimoney was something that was going to be recognised, and that especially if they start bringing in this legislation, they're hoping to. So the Veterinary Surgeons Act that we have to follow at the moment in the UK means that we have to basically get vet permission. It's slightly changed recently, but basically, you get vet permission before you treat an animal. And that now, if it's routine, you don't need to do that. But I always think, well, you don't know if it's routine if it's the very first time you go and see a horse, and you don't know if it's a routine because you then turn up and then they go, oh yeah, we've just had that. So they're trying to legislate that and upgrade that to a better system, so that perhaps they're covered like the vet nurses and like vets, and so you sort of like know who you're getting. So you're getting somebody qualified. Not that I necessarily think that qualifications mean that you're a good therapist, but they certainly sort of like give you a better understanding of who you might be dealing with.
Yeah.
And so I went and did the McTimoney course because of that, and also thought, there's never one answer. There's, I can't treat and cure, or I can improve every horse. I hope I'd improve every horse, but I can't always get to the bottom. There's other techniques and so it was sort of like learning that. And so from that I did the McTimoney, and I think I've come to it again now that I'm sort of like going, oh, I need something else added in, and I'm also sort of like looking at the myofascial lines books, and I just don't think you ever stop learning, and there's always more things to be sort of like added into your repertoire. I might learn the technique from somebody else, which is a soft tissue technique that I haven't used before. So it's just sort of building those things all the time for each horse. And each horse that you come to, you think, oh, they don't like that, or this seems to work for them. And so you can take that forward to the next horse.
Yeah.
Or
No,
dog. I do dogs.
Yeah, and dogs. Yeah, of course. I do forget. Well, I don't forget other dogs. Jet, who sadly isn't with us
This
anymore,
dog
always used to tell us.
says, "You're talking. I must come and see."
Go again.
This one's blind. She has to look at you in a strange way, which is basically sniffing you. Go on.
Yeah, and I remember when Jet was still with us, that's my old terrier. She would regularly come and tell you that it was that she needed. Well, she'd tell you she needed the treatment or not, basically, wouldn't she? She would either kind of go and see Jin and be very, yeah, whatever, like, hi, it's nice to see you, or she'd go and literally sit on Jin's feet until Jin did something with her.
Or on my back.
Yeah, or on your back.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't nice to lie on your back. But yeah, no, that's interesting. So, in terms of the difference, so you've just sort of said a little bit there anyway about obviously horses maybe liking different things, or sort of different issues maybe needing, or different, trying to get to the sort of the bottom of the matter. Like you say, probably most of these modalities will to some extent help most horses, won't they? But I guess depending on what that underlying issue is, might lead you to use one treatment more than another. So maybe to begin with, could you just explain maybe a bit more about the difference between the certainly the modalities that you use, but even any other, things that you might know about people you've worked with. So, for instance, if you've worked with vet physios or anything else, what is the, because I think people have back people out, don't they? I'm having the back lady out, or they call them physios, whether they're a physio or not. They call them a chiro, whether a chiro or not. They're just back people. So what is the difference between the massage, the McTimoney, the osteo, vet phys? Right.
So Jin's guide to what the four do. Shall I just go through this? This is my understanding, and this is how I try to explain it to people. So quite often, vet physios. No, I'm not a vet physio. I have no qualifications in vet physio things. I use techniques that vet physios use. I consider them as rehabbing people from injury, because normally they're working alongside the vets, and they quite often use electrotherapy of some sort, whether that's shockwave, TENS machines, H waves, or anything like that. They have the ability to go in and use those machines, and that you can use those machines and not be a vet physio, but on the whole you tend to be trained in a particular one of those, and that vet physio should be able to use multiple different machines and should have an understanding of injury and injury repair, and so that's where they would be working. Massage therapists, body workers, I say, basically body workers, massage therapists, I say they were working on soft tissue, essentially. So they're working on muscles, ligaments, tendons, and fascia, and that. And they may be specialising working on one of those areas and that. So they would be tended to use hand techniques and possibly some equipment like cups, or I've got some sort of like metal bits that I use occasionally just to rest my hands. Chiros do adjustments to bone, and that they obviously can have soft tissue training as well. They do adjustments to bones to improve range of motion and to improve nerve supply, and that. And they use the technique, which is high amplitude, high speed, low amplitude thing. So basically, if you see McTimoney or you see any other chiros, they tend to be getting to a point of restriction on a bone, and they'll be doing a quick movement. So even when they lift up the leg and they throw your horse across the stable by it, they've taken it to its end of its range of movement, and then they're doing a quick movement through, and it's a bit like a jammed door. You sort of like almost pushing it the other way to open it further, so you give its range of motion back, and that should hopefully improve any nerve supplies that have been compromised, any soft tissue that's been compromised, because it will encourage the muscles to contract and then relax around it. Osteopaths work on basically their principle is that the fluid is king, essentially, that the artery is king, and so they're looking at blood flow, but they're not just looking at blood flow, they're looking at lymph flow, they're looking at the flow of liquids around the system, and that also goes through the matrix that's actually going through the fascia as well. So there's this chiropractic came out of osteopathic things, and that, but all of those, one of those works on its own individually. No one of those has all the answers, and also the horse doesn't know which one you're using on it. It has absolutely no idea. It just knows whether it's actually going to make a difference to it, you know, and whether it feels, you know, better or more improved from it, or whether it just doesn't like it because, you know, it's a particular thing. You know, you could have some horses they really like, sort of like being pummeled with a tympanometric thing. Other horses hate that. Perfectly understandable. If you've had a massage yourself, you know sort of like the techniques that you like and you don't like. That won't be able to tell you more about massaging humans. And so it's actually sort of like looking at those things. Those are all those modalities coming in together, and within sort of like the soft tissue ones, you might have Masterson's technique, or you might have, you know, other techniques that come in to play those. Many of those have similar things that they've been taught through and that, but so which one should you use? I think, you know, you have to consider what you're actually doing. If you're dealing with an injury, you're probably looking at vet physio, and that if you're dealing with musculoskeletal issues, vet physios, or one of the others, and that. But it's actually sort of like going, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get range of motion back? Are you trying to improve the strength of the muscles? Are you trying to relax the horse because it's tense or something? And then actually look at it that way, perhaps. And that's why it's useful if you can have a therapist that's multiple modalities, or you have different therapists. You know, I work alongside a lot of therapists, you know, that are more trained, or, you know, thought of more soft tissue ones, or ones, you know, I work alongside an osteo-chiro and a vet who is an acupuncturist. And there's a group of us, we go in all three together, we all look at the horses together, and we treat, you know, as we find for our particular modalities that we use.
I think that's a really important point to make, is and I think it's something that's missing a lot in the equestrian world, not just in you know, body workers of all descriptions, but through coaches, trainers, all sorts. That idea of collaboration, I think, is just such a key point that we have got to start getting on board with now. The idea that, you know, you might go in and see a horse and actually treat it and make it a better to some degree, but then say, there's still something going on here that I think needs to see a vet, or that actually the osteopath that I work with, I think would really benefit this horse. And the fact that you've got that knowledge then to know what you're good at, to be able to say, I'm really good at this bit and I can do this and I can make horse feel better here, but actually that's out of my remit and somebody else is a specialist in that bit. And I think it's the same, you know, like I say, in coaching, I think you see it a lot where people are worried about going and having lessons with other people, or people get quite proprietal about their clients. I think a lot of people are worried about losing clients, aren't they? And I think something is a really key point to note, that, you know, saddle
an interest, an interesting story on that was when I first started and I was only doing soft tissue, and obviously there were a couple of chiros around here that I know quite well and have known over the years. One of the chiros said, oh, it's all right, we always used to let the massage therapist go in first and then the chiro goes in afterwards, because the person remembers the last person that treated the horse. But actually it's easier for the chiro to treat the horse after the soft tissue work's been done as well. So it's sort of like, actually we're just peeling layers off an onion and that until we get to the root cause and that, you know. But the owners will remember, the carers of the horse will remember the last person that treated them. I think that's the answer. So you sort of like have to understand, actually, no, you don't get to where you do without all the other bits coming into play as well. And that with your coaching as well, you know, you can be the most brilliant coach in the world, but if they go on and have a lesson with somebody else and they just say something in a slightly different way and it clicks, they come back to you, they can take on board all the other stuff that you've done, exactly the same thing. But we always sort of like go, oh no, you know, we mustn't let that. I don't mind it that people sort of like, you know, advertise or undercut or do all of those things around them, because it's just sort of, I think, actually, you know, if they're doing some good for the horse, and if they're no good, I'll end up treating those horses again. And if they are good, that's great, because I'm really, really busy as well. You know, somebody that works alongside me and has come out with me for ages is just qualified as a McTimoney chiropractor, Pollyanna, and I just think it's fantastic, you know, because she will be amazing. And she'd just done the soft tissue before and just said, go and do the McTimoney, so you've got that extra thing to go.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, and I think that's so interesting. And I think hence this whole informed to perform thing. It's all very well, like, you know, the chiro saying, oh well, if the people will remember the last person to treat. But actually, if they're doing their job well and they know, you know, they found out what else has happened to the horse before they've seen it, i.e. you or another soft tissue worker has been out beforehand, then realistically the owner should be having that explained. You know, for me personally, that should be explained. Cool, that's brilliant that you're getting the soft tissue looked at as well. that will have done this, that's going to make my job much easier. When we work in conjunction with each other, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with this horse now that Dan's owner remembers the chiropractor, maybe only gets the chiropractor out the next couple of times. They're not going to get the same result because they've not repeated the same thing of soft tissue work and chiropractic techniques. And like I said, which is why I just think this whole idea of people trying to go, and that's why I love talking to you, as you know, we often have quite in-depth conversations when you're about all sorts of things. But that's what I love about it is this idea that we are just all sharing our knowledge and trying to find out more about, you know, the animals that we're all supposed to love and enjoy spending time with. Otherwise,
well, and there's no point in us taking all our knowledge to the grave and not having shared it with everyone. That's what I say, you know, I want to give this all out. I spent a long time learning this, but I want to share it. I want to make animals' lives better. And it's like you with the coaching, you're teaching people how to be, you know, ride better, you know, have a better ethos about their whole things that they do with their horses. And so therefore the horse has a better time. That's what we're there for.
And the more knowledge then the riders have, and the owners and the carers of the horses, the better decisions they, you know, the better equipped they are to make those decisions and to find the right people to help them and support them on the way, or to have people hopefully like us in their lives who can then help them to find, you know, to point them in the right direction of who they might, you know, benefit from at some point. So yeah, I just think, you know, that's why these conversations with, you know, other professionals like you, I think are going to be so important for people to actually find out more about the reality of what it is, how it works, what it does, and also what they can do, which we'll get onto hopefully in a minute. So you talked a little bit about it might depend on the horse and what you want to do with the horse, i.e. relaxation, whether there's a restriction somewhere, a range of movement thing, etc., etc. So to some extent, obviously, owners can potentially have that in mind when they think about, you know, why is it they're calling somebody out? Obviously, what is it that's made them call somebody out? Obviously, because somebody like you can do more than one thing, you're not just stuck with that. What sort of things would you have in front of you that you might use McTimoney techniques on, or you know, what sort of things have you seen where you might go, actually, that's more, I'll probably go down a McTimoney route more there, or here I'll go more massage. I've seen you treat a lot. I know you do a lot of soft tissue. I know that's sort of probably where your heart really sits, is in the soft tissue work and the you know, sort of fascia stuff and the myofascial release type scenario. But also I've seen you then choose on some horses to do the odd quick McTimoney thing here and there, and then go into, you know, I've seen you sort of switch modalities quite quickly between what you're doing. So what things do you see when you then maybe think about how to choose what you're going to do, what you know, where you're going to start?
Oh, crikey, that's a hard one.
I didn't say
I suppose it's just seeing how. Oh, dog number 2. There are many more you get to see in a minute. No, go on, mate. I think it's just seeing how that horse is reacting to you as well. And that interesting study I can say about Pollyanna, who's just done her MSc, and that she says it's like, you know, how her actual thesis was looking at why people use a particular practitioner, and that it was a narrative thing, and the outcome was that it was the ones that were most in tune with the horse. And so it doesn't really matter what qualifications you've got or anything, you know, if you're in tune with that horse and you can do something with that horse, that's what the owner perceives as being good. And I think that's my thing, that I do read the horses, and I do try and read the horses and see what they like. You know, if they really don't like, you know, lots of horses don't like having their necks approached anymore, strangely enough, because lots of horses are having lots of injections in their necks. So perhaps we won't start there now.
Yeah.
And that, or, you know, they're ear shy, or, you know, they, for whatever reason, it's just like, well, if a horse really doesn't like it, then don't do it. You know, find another way of doing that. You know, if they're finding trouble picking up their feet. I suppose I generally look for asymmetry, first of all, between left and right of the horse, and that I would generally have a feel over it all over with hands, just to see those differences between the sides of this particular tension. And then it is a quick sweep of sort of like where the bones are with the spine, pelvis level and everything. And then it's a decision on that. I tend to work from one side to the other, through neck, front leg, back, hind leg, left to right, because I can remember between those two sorts of areas at a time. I can't remember all of it all at once, and I do have, and obviously writing it down. And then as you're working through, I would tend to do the McTimoney ones nearer the end, because I think the horse is more relaxed at that point. You've released any muscle tension. Usually after you've done some soft tissue work, the horse will tend to be more relaxed as well. And that just makes your job a lot easier. If a horse is sort of like not wanting to pick up its leg, or, you know, is holding tension, you're not going to be able to do an adjustment anyway. And you can't explain to them, you know, deep breath in, deep breath out, oof, or whatever. You know, you're actually sort of like having to work with how they're actually going to be able to allow you to do that. So that's my main thing. And it's also, you have to think, you know, I've got an hour to do with this horse. What do I want to achieve in that hour? Where are we going? You know, I've spoken to the owner and thinking about, you know, what competition they've got coming up, or what they're wanting to do with the horse, or where the horse is in its training. And I think you're taking all of those into time. And then also it's like, you know, I'm going to give, you know, X number of more in-depth things. So if I'm doing adjustments, I won't adjust necessarily everything that's in front of me that needs to be adjusted. I will adjust the things that I think are going to make the most significant difference to the horse.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because obviously, yeah, you're right, you've got an hour, and also you maybe have seen this horse, it might be the first time you're seeing it, or you might see it, it might be one that's on your books more regularly, but maybe you're not seeing it quite as much as would be ideal, or whatever. And I suppose it's a very similar approach to, look, you know, what I'm making as a coach, which is, when we look at somebody riding, there's normally quite a few things you could fix, and you're trying to find maybe 2 or 3 things you can pick up on in that session. And then, like, exactly that, you're going to prioritize on what you think is going to make the biggest difference, or is going to help them with what they're working on right now.
Yeah. And what they can take away from that, you know, like that horse, you know, if that horse can start moving that leg better, then it's all the other tension that we're seeing going across that diagonal going to go away, or, you know,
yeah,
whichever. You know, if the horse has suddenly started hanging on the right rein for the rider, then that's probably something we need to address quite soon, if it wasn't doing that before. And so we will, you know, you look more in depth into the area. Why is it hanging on the right rein?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So obviously not every, and I know this is something that people do stress about. I know we're sort of staying on the modality quite a bit, but I think it is something that people they just get confused. They don't really know what to do. So, and not everyone can use you, because, you know, then you'll be too busy and you can't come and treat my horses. So, so not everybody's going to have the same level of, same breadth of knowledge, I suppose, same breadth of modalities at their disposal. So if somebody approached you who was out of area entirely, there was no chance of you being able to get there, and when I say who would you recommend, I don't mean a specific person, but what sort of modality, would it be soft tissue, would it be McTimoney, what would be do you think would be your first recommendation to people? Or if it would depend on what issue it was, what sort of issues would you be thinking, okay, I'd maybe see a McTimoney chiropractor for you, or for you, I'd be looking at maybe somebody who does soft tissue? Or is there any other?
It would probably be asking a few questions of them, and sort of like say, you know, is there a particular issue that they're seeing at the moment? You know, how long's that issue been going on? What other things have they tried as well?
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like then going from there and going, well, okay, so you know, they know that. I'm just thinking dogs now, because I quite often get asked about dogs, and I don't travel so far for dogs on the whole, because they either come to me or I see them in their homes, but I, you know, have to have a limit on the distance so much for dogs. And so it's sort of like understanding, okay, so if they've had an operation on a particular joint or anything, then you might be looking at somebody that knows a bit more about, you know, dogs for a start, but also somebody that might be sort of like specially trained in a rehab situation for that sort of things. So it's really hard. I think it's really hard for people, and I think that's why at the end of the day most people go by word of mouth on finding a therapist, and then it's whether you get on with them, you know, and talk to them on the phone. I've had somebody approach me recently. She's had some bad experiences with other therapists for various reasons, you know, just they're not a good fit for whatever reason, and I said, oh well, let's have a voice, you know, a video call. And that's, you can see me, you know, I can introduce you to my dogs, I can meet your dog, sort of like, you know, and you can just talk about it and that, and, you know, and there's somebody that's sort of like quite concerned and everything, and that's fine. But, you know, to have that, we probably wouldn't have even thought of before is really
Yeah.
important. And you can always do that. I mean, any therapist should be able to just go online and have a chat to you, or you should be able to ask some questions and everything. And that, but if they come to you from word of mouth, you sort of like know you're already going down the same thing. Hopefully they should understand, because I know other people. Yeah, if somebody approached me completely out of area, I would find it quite hard. I would probably tell them to go online and see who is in their area, or I might look and say, oh yeah, I do actually know them. It might be worth approaching them and that. But I don't know how, even the therapists that qualify with me, I don't know all of their qualifications they've got now or anything, or how they work, or how they get on with people, or whether they do things that I think, oh, that's a bit odd, but I don't understand why they're doing it. So I think it's impossible, really. I think it's really, really hard for people. I wouldn't know who to go to, and that I tend to trade with people that I'm doing stuff for them for, if I'm having any other therapist done on my animals.
I think it's a really interesting point. And I guess ultimately, it's about how your horse responds, isn't it? Like you said, Pollyanna study, it's been about how in tune people were with the horse. I guess sometimes it's going to be a case of trying something, isn't it? If you're getting something new in, it's going to be a case of trying them, seeing how your horse responds to them, seeing how your horse responds. Do they feel better after the treatment? Do they, we can't always expect miracles, for goodness sake, which I think some people do. But do they feel better? Did they respond well to the treatment? Did they respond well to the person? I guess they're all the things that almost more important than the modality. They're the things you want to be looking at, aren't they? And if they didn't, the other thing I think that probably, and I don't know, you might agree or disagree with this, but if you have, when I say bad experience, I don't mean a bad experience as in like something awful happened. If you don't feel like the modality or the person that came and treated your horse made as much of a difference as you thought, it might be worth actually contacting that person and saying, look, we talked about this and this, you said you treated this, I'm still finding this. Because they might either say, okay, that could be because of X, Y, or Z, and they might say, okay, maybe they might have an idea of, like you said, you work with other people, other practitioners, other therapists might have the same thing, where they've also got other people they work with, where if they know what your issue is, if they know that you've come back to them and gone, look, I just feel like this didn't really do a huge amount for my horse, have you got any recommendations of what else I could try? Because actually some of them might put the phone down on you and be quite rude, but some therapists, or most therapists hopefully, would.
You probably don't want to be with the therapist that's rude to you either, because actually we're meant to be helping people. I usually say to people, if we haven't made an improvement to something after 2 treatments, and that be that of whatever distance apart that they would be, then I'm missing something. I need to take on board sort of like some more things that are coming into play, and also perhaps we need to look at something else within the system as well. Have I asked all the right questions? Typical example I had the other day, I'd spoken to the owner, I'd got heard all about the background for this particular horse before I went to treat it and everything. I had in my mind whatever it is. I'd contacted the vets, everything. The vet told me it was a different joint to the joint that the owner had told me it was. It was just like, that actually makes quite a bit of difference when I'm going in there to start treating this animal, and also what we would be doing with it. So it's just like, actually that's why you need to talk to the vets before you go out to do that. All innocent on the owner thought that was the joint, just from their knowledge. So the owner's gained new knowledge now and understands a bit more of how it works and how that joint works. I understand how important it is to ask the right questions, and for them to actually go, because it was all done over the phone, which joint do you think it is, and then me to have the vet sort of like confirm, this is a joint, these are the x-rays, oh yes, that definitely is what I think it is now. So, yeah.
And again, goes back to the idea of collaboration, doesn't it? The idea that that if people do collaborate well, it's only going to really be to the benefit of the horse, and therefore to the benefit of their owners, carers, riders, etc. as well. So obviously you've been out on the road now for a few years doing this job. So what do you think are some of the most common issues you see?
Oh, what's ever fashionable at the moment.
Okay.
I don't say that lightheartedly. I say that as it's what tends to be being diagnosed, and I don't know whether that's conformationally how we're riding them, or because the diagnostic techniques are out there. But I mean, when I was younger, it was all navicular, and that was about it, really. Your horse had navicular, and then it had hot problems, and that would have been it. And now it's all, you know, kissing spines, ulcers, suspensories, you know,
SI injections are quite
SI injections and everything. And it's amazing, you know. And I think, you know, my little thing about all of this is, I think if you look hard enough, you'll probably find something wrong with a lot, or not wrong, you know, but something that would be abnormal in so many areas of any horse. But is that the thing that's making it not functionally fit for purpose? And that's what we want our horses to be. Ultimately, they have to be, well, sound for purpose. Sorry, I'm going to cough. You know, whether that's hacking, whether that's going to a world games or anything, you know, if they can do the job and they're comfortable and they're happy, it doesn't matter that they've got, you know, a side bone or something. If they can, you know, if they're performing okay. Well, I'm definitely going. And so that sort of like the main consideration is that actually the things that I'm seeing or whether they're causing the issue. And the other thing is, if you spend all your insurance money, because quite often it's because it's insurance and it's being paid for, on diagnostics, you've got a lot less money to spend on treatment.
Yeah, very, very valid point. Yeah, very valid point. So that's sort of the I guess that's sort of the vet. Really, I've got a dog now as well. So that's, I suppose, you know, let's say that almost the vet diagnostics, the things that you're seeing that maybe people are trying to get help with. What do you think you most commonly see in terms of what you find the issues are, I suppose, in terms of, I guess if you go quite basic in terms of, you know, obviously pelvic rotation, you know, that sort of pelvic rotations,
pelvic rotation, tension lumbers on the right hand side, lumbers into gluteals on the right hand side of the horse. I think that's a left right diagonal thing with horses, and I think it's where we do a lot of things from the left hand side. Horses quite often are on, horses tend to spin left, and that normally 75% probably spin left before they would spin right, depending on if they're left or right handed. It's like whether you work out what dogs are left or right pawed by throwing a ball and seeing which way they turn. And we can't really teach horses to do that. But if they spook at something, they will tend to spin one way, and that will be their left-footedness and that. And we then do everything from the left-hand side, so we make them naturally left bent, and that we get on, we lead them, and that. And it's understandable why we do that, but there's no logic in it, particularly now. I think it's very good to lead horses when they're young from the left-hand side until they learn to get out of your way, and then you can lead them from both sides, and you should teach them that they need to still get out of your way if they're fighting by something. We don't need to mount from the left anymore. We don't carry a sword, and that. But you try mounting from the right, it's almost impossible.
Hard. I have done it.
And that everything that's well, we have to do it at stage 2 BHS. You used to have to do it. I don't know whether you do now. You know, all the buckles quite often are done up only on the left-hand side of things. It's just like, what's this all about? And that. So we make them left-handed, and I think that's why they end up hanging on the right rein sometimes with us, because they're naturally sort of like bent that way. And that they tend to be all bent there, and then they get this tension in the gluteals, pelvic issues and that. And I think a lot of horses haven't learnt to open up through their shoulders. They don't push from behind. They get into an unbalanced frame. Their head sort of looks like it's in the right place, but they're not pushing from behind, and they're not loosened in their shoulders. And so they carry that tension there. And if you think about it, horses don't mature at the shoulder sort of onto the backbone area until they're about 7 or 8. And so, you know, us asking them to do things earlier on than that, they're needing to mature still.
Yeah, interesting point. Actually, it's funny. It's an interesting point about the doing everything from the left. My last talk was about almost things you could do with your horse that don't involve riding it, in essence. And I sort of talked a bit about groundwork, but I did talk about the fact that there are horses out there that literally if you try and put a rug, I've known a couple that if you try and put a rug on them from the right even, they're traumatized by it because they're so used to everything being done from the left. Whereas our horses, I basically put a rug on from whichever side I pick, whichever way the front of the rug is, I'll just put it on from that side, wherever I am. Same with the saddle, it goes on, if I pick the saddle up with my right hand on the front of the saddle, I'll be putting it on from the right. If it gets picked up the other way around, it'll be going on from the left. I'm quite, I just do it from whichever side. Same with picking feet out, the horses will have their feet picked out either side. And it wasn't really a conscious decision to do it, it just is something that happened. And we often lead two in together. So all of our horses can be led from whichever side, because we don't have one that always has to be the one that's led. None of them have to be the one that's led from the correct side, But no, it's a really interesting point. And I did talk about that. And I think especially something I've been thinking about with lead rein ponies as well, because obviously with having Aurora for Scarlet now, and when, if they get a bit strong, you end up with this pony that's all sort of curled up around you. Always being led from the left. So when I haven't got Scarlet on her, again, if I do any handwork with her, I do tend to try and lead her from both sides to kind of straighten her back out the other way. But yeah, it's a really interesting point actually, that we kind of almost make them that left-handed, sided. What would you say are some of the most serious issues that you've seen? And when I say serious, I mean as in not necessarily vet jobs where things that you could treat, things that are within your remit, but that actually have maybe taken the longest to fix, or it's maybe a secondary issue to something that has been a vet job or something. What have have you seen any horses that have been, it's sort of quite interested to hear some stories of what you've treated, what you've seen.
I suppose I quite like sort of like the hyoid in the head, and I think it's something that gets missed out a lot on treatments. And that, everybody treats the spine, and they're obsessed with the legs, and I think I'm much more about the head, and sort of like the nostrils are the same height, the eyes are the same height, are they able to move both of their ears the same way, and there are all sort of like stretches and movements you can do with that. Obviously hyoid and lower jaw, TMJ, making sure those can do, and those can make huge different effects. And that I was really lucky a few years back to sort of like see some GA osteopathic techniques done out. So they put the horse under full general anesthetic, but then they do very long, slow stretches, and I just thought it's sort of like almost like an unwinding. And you can see these horses, like they'd have them on their backs, and they couldn't lie straight. And you just think, if that's like their natural relaxed position, and that that's quite scary. And I think people always think I'm a bit strange. When I first come in to talk to people, I'll want to just observe the horse just standing in its stable or whatever, and you just sort of like see how much weight they're perhaps putting down one side, or they've got their head out their stable and they can only look one way because there's a wall the other way, and so they're constantly looking to the one way, and so they're naturally putting themselves into that position, or they've got a hay net that's tied at a strange angle, or they've actually so much of their day they're getting themselves into bad posture, basically, like we do. And so it's sort of like something we need to consider. So I suppose really it's those postural things that really take the time to change.
So would you say that potentially things like how we set up the stable, how our horses are kept, almost the husbandry side of things, is in a ridden horse, because obviously some horses aren't ridden at all anyway, would you say that's at least as important then potentially as what they're doing under saddle?
Because if they're 95% of their time at least a day, aren't they, stood at a strange angle, because that's how they can drink their water, or they have to look out their stable the one way, or they always spin their hay net the one way, and so therefore they're always pulling the hay out the one way, and that they're doing that all the time. And then you go to ride them, they've already set themselves up into that pattern. There's a muscle memory there from what they've actually done, and then you're riding them with your asymmetries from your bad posture, from all the things you've done, and you're either going to be helping or hindering them. and that with those. So I think that's sort of like something to consider quite strongly. And there's lots of things you can do quite easily to, change some of the posture things. Don't have their hay all in one hay net, don't have it all in one place in the stable. They think I'm really weird probably on my yard, but I've got like about 3 different feeding stations for the hay for my horse, and that one of them's in a high hay net, one of them's actually on the ground, and one of them's in a movable thing that she moves around the stable. No, but I think it's sort of like, it just gives, it's enrichment, environmental enrichment as well, for them to be having that. My horse doesn't ever kick the stable door, is anxious about feed, because actually she doesn't get fed with all the others, and she doesn't get a massive feed that she's anxiously waiting for. And that there's sort of like some way of doing that, because that can sort of like, it builds up tension in them, and if they're tense and they're always waiting for something, that's part of their issue, isn't it? So we sort of like need to consider that. As to main things that changes, I think a lot of the stuff, I can relax muscles, I can put, I can make joints move optimally, and that with the work that I do, it's the things that get done in between time and the strengthening of the horses, so that they can actually use, that body that we've given them is critical as well. Otherwise I come back every, I don't know, month, 6 weeks, 3 months. I usually say to people, I see them either between monthly and 6 monthly. If I'm fixing the same things all the time, then we need to be doing something different in between times, because it may have a natural pattern for that horse to always go back into that, but can we ultimately long-term change it by improving other areas for it?
I think that's a really important point. I've this year qualified as a human sports massage therapist, and I think and I'm currently doing my personal trainer qualification, and I think what's been great about doing that is it's made me think about the things we do with a horse that we know so much about training the human athlete, so much, and we know so much about how sort of massage, mobility, strength, flexibility work all links together within the human athlete. It's still not used enough. It's still not done enough. A lot of people don't use it enough, but it's known about. At the higher level athlete, people are doing that. We know how physiologically muscles adapt to training. We therefore, within gym programs and training programs for human athletes, we all have a 4 to 6 week cycle of exercises that we do, that we gradually increase the resistance of, or the time, or we gradually overload it basically, and then we might have another 4 to 6 weeks where we change those exercises up and change what we do. And it's something I've been talking about a lot on here, so anyone who's listened to the previous stuff would have heard me talking about the structure of how we ride, what we're doing, and how we're thinking about it. And I just think it's so interesting that when people get on their horses, we'll get on and we'll do a little bit of this and a little bit of that today, and then tomorrow we'll do a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and then the next day we'll do something else a little bit, and maybe 3 weeks later we might eventually sort of repeat some of the stuff we've done. Or people get on and for 3 days in a row they go, right, we're going to do shoulder in, we're gonna nail it. So then they spend 3 or 4 days doing shoulder in every single day until they can work, until the horse learns how to do it now. And I just think that is in no way how we would ever train as humans. And for some reason, we still don't seem to quite have, probably at the top level, we have, the likes of Carl Hester maybe has, you read some of his stuff, he sounds quite, I quite like how he writes about, what they do. I've never seen him train, but, what they do. But certainly the lower levels and filtering down, we haven't got this understanding of the physiological adaptation of muscles and how that's going to happen, or we're not applying it, maybe is a better way of putting it. And you're exactly right. So we have, the amount of people I see get on their horse and within 2 minutes they're trotting, no warm up, no nothing. Not just trotting, but trotting and asking them to trot, and why aren't you trotting properly already? I'm like, well, hang on, steady a minute. And all the things you just said as well about how horses are standing, and horses are stable for a lot longer. A lot of horses nowadays are stable for longer, especially at this time of year. and then people don't necessarily adapt their warm-up to account for that, and they're not looking at those bigger issues. And I think that's a really important point to make. And I think, you know, you saying about the posture and the whole idea of that, and interestingly, I've had real bad neck and back issues recently, and it's all my own fault. I haven't done anything about it. I know it's all to do with mobility as well as strength, and I've done no mobility work until recently. My neck isn't the best it's been for ages, because I've just started to actually get up in the morning and do a bit of mobility work, really simple, straightforward stuff, nothing exciting. And I think, you know, the postural stuff, I suppose what can we do with our horses as part of our warm-up, or even in hand, or that kind of almost accounts for that mobility wise, and not necessarily static stretching that we could do afterwards, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. But so for instance, what I found myself doing with a lot of the horse I ride, but also a lot of the people I train, is actually helping them to understand how to do a good walk warm-up. So a good walk warm-up for me doesn't just involve walking around for 10 minutes. We also, when I'm asking them to do things like leg yielding, and I don't really necessarily care where their legs go. I don't care if it's like a test quality leg yield. I just want the joints to, you know, if we're going to do some of that lateral work in the session, I want their joints, like we would in a human, to have gone forwards and backwards. I want them to have gone a little bit side to side. I want them to have gone a bit diagonal, because they're all the things we're going to do with them in the session. You know, is that heading, you know, from a bodywear perspective, is that heading along the right lines? Is that kind of where we need to be thinking a bit more, do you think, with our horses generally, of when we're riding them and how we're working them?
Yeah, I think we get so obsessed with the end result that we forget that actually what we need to do is make sure that the end result lasts for as long as it can. And that, you know, always say, you know, you've only got so many jumps in a horse, you've only got so many canter pirouettes in any horse, and that, you know, actually physically its body and everything. And so optimizing that is by actually building in the strength and the flexibility, you know, and the stamina within the joints, within the muscles, and within sort of like the interest of the horse. I think it's really interesting you're saying about, you know, going in and doing a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this then one day, and then, oh no, we're just going to do shoulder in for the next 3 days and that. Now, what is that horse going to go into the school and think is going to happen each time? You know, what is going to go through their mind? You know, they're intelligent, sentient beings. We know that. If they go in and you're giving them something really difficult to do, and that they're finding it really difficult, you're therefore finding it difficult because of that, you know, that's not achieving it. You actually, you know, they're not then wanting to do the thing next time. It's like a vicious circle, isn't it? You know, like if there's something that your horse can do and they enjoy doing it, then make sure that you sort of like build that in, and then build on that. You know, little building blocks are the way that you go forward in teaching them to do it. I've got a really silly thing at the moment. My last horse, I taught him to retrieve things. And that it took ages. He liked picking up things in his mouth anyway, but I could point to things and go and tell him to touch. I'm trying to teach my one now. She doesn't like picking up things. That she's got the touch thing now, but she sort of like goes, yeah, that's that. But it's just like something we can go and do. It exercises her brain and everything. But now we go in and she's desperate to try and touch everything, and it's got really useful now, because if she's a bit scared of something, I can just say the word touch. She goes, oh, all right, then I'll go and touch it then. Just like, yeah. So there's lots of things that you think people don't do these other bits with them. They don't have that, you know, you end up not having a relationship. You have a riding relationship and that. And I think, you know, not always certain that horses know that when we're on their backs, it's the same as the person that they have on the ground with them. And that, you know, long lining was the way that you used to train, you know, and you should still train horses now before you get on their backs. You know, it gives them all the same commands and everything. And people don't do those things with them. And so they get different commands, you know, from when we're on the ground, from when we're on top. Now, and with the body workers, you know, a horse that moves away when you ask it to move away is so much easier. Or stand still when you want it to stand still, so I don't have to keep getting on off my box and that. But we can do lots of things with the horse, you know, to make sure that all of those joints are moved optimally. You know, you can do your own range of motion on joints, you know, while the horse is stood in the stable. If it's on box rest, you know, with veterinary approval, talking to the right people and everything, there are lots and lots of things you can do to make box rest not seem awful. Or if your horse is in the stable because it's really icy and everybody go, oh, you know, I can't ride my horse, you know, it's going to be, you know, wild when I get to ride it again, because it's not been out for so many days. It's just like there are loads of things you could, you could have taught it to touch things. You could, mobilize its legs for it. You could teach it a load of new tricks and keep its mind working, and then possibly when it goes out, it'll be slightly more sensible and not frustrated that it's been shut in a cage for 3 days.
No, I think it's really true, and I think it's I think it's something I'm really conscious of at the minute, and we touched on this a bit when you came out last week. My time is not the same as it used to be. We're having 2 small children now, and life's very different. And I'm sure I'm not the only one with various life changes that happen. And so, although I've always been busy, and if you remember when the yard was insanely busy, we had 13 to 15 horses in work at times, and I was the only rider there. But that was my only thing. That was what I was doing day in, day out. So although I was really busy on the yard, I was there all day. So yes, sometimes it was a bit like speed through the riding, but then there was still time, and they were all being, they're all being platted up once a week as well. So that was like bath and platting time, which is still time you're spending with them doing stuff that's a bit different. And now I'm on the yard a lot less, and I feel quite aware that I don't feel like the relationship I have with the horses I've currently got is and it probably is still quite strong. I think, if I'm in the field where the herd is, Roxy's out with 6 other horses, she will always come over. They always come to see us. They all come to see us, and we do definitely have a relationship. But if I compare the relationship now to the ones that I had, and you remember the 2 ginger mares, Penny and Midge particularly, who massively outperformed what anyone thought they probably should have done. If I compare the relationship I have now to the horses I've got to them, and even to P when I was seriously competing her and having to do a lot in between times, I just feel like it's not the same. I haven't got quite the same thing. And then you're right, we get very hot onto what do I need to teach you next? What should my horse be doing? What's my next competition? Where am I going with it next? And I've just tried to kind of take that all back and go, actually, I think working with other people, I've been doing this a bit. What is my process? What's my process at the moment? What do I want to achieve with this horse? And actually, do you know what? I want a horse who enjoys her job, is strong and supple, and can do the job well, and physically is going to be able to withstand the job. And if that means I reframe how I work for a bit, I think that's probably what I need to do. If because of my time limitations or whatever I'm going to do, if that means that sometimes it takes a bit longer to build a fitness, because some days I do go, do you know what? Today we're just going to play. Today we're going to play and have some fun and mess around with your posture and do some other stuff. And I just think we are so caught up in this cycle of, you could go somewhere every week to compete now, pretty much, couldn't you? Let's be honest. Everybody could go out somewhere to compete or do a clinic or do something every week. And I think we feel like we should, got these horses and we should be doing that. And actually, I think sometimes we just need to take a breath and just go, why did I get into this in the first place? What was this all about?
Horses used to get a holiday. What horses have holidays now, really? And it's okay. They are meant to. Who used to, let the horses down for the winter. And that whereas now you could go out every, twice a week and still compete and do all of those things. And it's just like, actually, we all need a holiday. Actually, we absolutely love what we do with our horses, and that we, don't do it if you don't love it. Just don't do it anymore, because it's not fair on you. It's not fair on the horses. But what is it you love about it? I love training. I hate competing. I don't compete. That's just me. I love all the training and the playing and all of that stuff. I love looking after them. I think it's a great privilege to be able to look after a horse, even though it's worrying whether you're doing it right or not, because that's what we do. And so, we have to think about those things. And then it's just like, well, if I'm going to enjoy this and I enjoy looking after her, how can I look after her so that she enjoys being looked after as well?
Yeah, and I think it's a really valid point.
One of my horses, and that she's a rescue. She doesn't like stables, so she has an outside pen, and she lives in that all year round.
And as you know, we have one that doesn't like stables much as well, don't we?
yeah. But like you sort of like have to find out what they like as well, and work with them.
Yeah, no, totally. So from that point, we've kind of touched on it anyway, but do you think riders, owners, carers, whoever it might be, do you think there's generally more that people can do to make their horse's life easier, but also then to make your job easier? So when you go, as you say, so you don't just go like every couple of months or however regularly people are having you out to treat their horses, and you don't just go and just repeat the same treatment every time. A bit like me with coaching, like, you know, I don't particularly want to go and teach the same lesson week in, week out. It's quite nice when people have then done a bit of their homework, so to speak, I suppose, and then been able to progress. I guess from your point of view, is that better for you as well, when you can kind of go out, you treat the horse, you kind of say, I'm feeling this, this, and this, maybe watch out for this, and then the next one you go, you're like, oh, okay, that's a bit better there, so that's a good thing.
Yeah,
so
brilliant. And yeah, and I just suppose, you know, that's me giving activation work for them, home exercises of various different levels, and also making sure that they've got a stretching routine. So those 3 areas. And then obviously, you know, them having the coaching and, you know, having a long-term aim, whatever that might be, you know, that they want to, I don't know, even if they just want to learn how to do something on a horse, you know, they never want to compete or anything, but I don't know, they want to teach it flying changes or anything. It's just like, okay, so they want to teach flying changes, right then. So you need to have good canter for that, actually. For good canter, you actually need a really good trot, and you actually need power coming from behind to do that, you know. And, you know, so you can take it back from each of those. So my thing, activation work is not stretches. So that's like side tail pulls, belly lifts, and that. It might be flexing particular parts of their neck or flexing certain parts of their bodies. And that, if you know that there's a weakness there, so you're activating and telling the muscles that you want to work when you perhaps riding them or you're training them from the ground. Let's just call it training. It can be from the ground, it can be ridden on top. That those muscles are activated. So tail pulls, side tail pulls, and everything, balancing and stability work, and that's which we do. The next thing was actually, you know, teaching them some things on the ground first is a lot easier for them, especially if you can get what works. We can have the remedial exercises, which aren't remedial. I use one of them on one of mine every single week, which is the belly bands. And that because she could potentially have kissing spines, I suppose, if she learns not to use her core properly. So just using those once a week, I'm ensuring that. Whether we put weights on one of the legs because one of the legs is a bit lazier, so we want to build up the muscle movement on there. We might put chains on them if we know that they've got proprioception difference on those. Pole work in walk, I think it's critical. I think every horse should have a pole walk session once a week, and that's at least. And that, I just think it's a really good way for them to really learn about them things. And also, if you do it from the ground, you can see whether they always want to do one leg first than the other, and if they're doing that, or if they always tip it with one leg, and that. And you don't get to feel that necessarily so much from on top unless you're a better rider. And then stretches are something that you want to be incorporating sort of either at the end of the session, or you want to be jumping off halfway between and doing it there. I think it's easy to do it stretches. Those are carrot stretches. Those are some of your core stretches that you can do, the baited stretches as well. And then some of the leg stretches as well. And that we've got. So sort of like all of those things you can incorporate into them as well.
Yeah, and do you think that's something that really everybody should be looking to start, you know?
Yeah.
With? I think it's
I mean, we spend a lot of our time looking after our horses, which actually means that we're not actually doing something with our horse. You know, we're mucking it out and we're doing all of these other things. But what we can all do is just find 5 minutes a day to do something.
Well, and I suspect that actually, in terms of the mobilisation stuff, you know, and the activation stuff, and the stretching in particular, actually riding your horse for 5 minutes less that day to incorporate stretching is probably more beneficial. And I don't mean knocking 5 minutes off your warm down, by the way, but off your cool down. I don't mean just sort of jumping off it. But yeah, you know, finding 5 minutes, you know, riding them for 5 minutes less, that stretching is probably going to be more beneficial to them than that 5 minutes extra that you'd have done.
Yeah, you know. And the research shows that you need to do stretches 3 to 5 times a week, no more than that. So you should be stretching them at least on 3 occasions.
Yeah.
I
remember saying that, every other day, because I remember what I was doing when I was actually doing my homework properly with P and to be fair, actually, if we go case study wise, we we've proven, I mean, I know we don't need to prove it works, but we've proven it works. When I was venting P to sort of, novice, intermediate level, she always had that patch in her glutes, didn't she? Always that part of the glute.
Lots of them have it.
Always. And so you were coming every 6 weeks? So she's quite short butting. She's quite a short coupled horse, for anyone who doesn't think of P is. Very short coupled, and she's quite a tense horse. She holds quite a lot of tension as well when she goes out competing. And so finally I got a bit of a kick on my backside of just being like, I've got to get on top of this, especially since I do actually have a massage qualification, which is a bit ridiculous. So between Jin coming about every 6 weeks, I think you were coming, weren't you, at that point?
Would have been.
Between Jin coming every 6 weeks, I was then stretching her 3 to 4 times a week, so nothing insane. After I'd ridden her, and I just, maybe the couple of bits that we knew were slightly more problematic areas for her, I was probably just doing a little bit of body work with her, but no, not necessarily a full massage in between, but just keeping on top of it a bit more. And I remember you coming and basically said to me, I don't need to be here today. And I was like, brilliant, treat her anyway. And it was great. It was the first time you kind of come and just gone, there's not really a lot for me to do. And
that's great if I don't need to treat them. I probably will find something else, but if we're not getting the repeat issues, it means that we're actually moving forward. We're not sort of like stuck in this loop.
Exactly that. And every time you came then, and I think that was part of it, wasn't it? It wasn't just that suddenly she was fixed, it was that every time you came, you were able to go almost a bit deeper into what was going on, because you weren't just fixing surface stuff that we've been fixing kind of over and over again. So you were obviously able to do a bit more, and then finally we got to a point where actually, so the frustrating thing for me is that I've seen it happen and I'm still not doing enough with the horses. So that's something with Roxy, and then with George hopefully coming into work next year, that I'm quite keen to make sure I do get on top of. I do very quickly want to touch on, and I don't want to keep too much longer, but only because I think it makes quite a good point, is you've worked with some power riders horses in recent times. So tell me a little bit about your work with the power horses, and how it's the same, but how it also might be slightly different possibly to other horses.
The power horses very much now are the higher end dressage horses.
They are.
And they're not what you might have used to have thought that were around there. Quite often they will have more than just the power rider riding them, particularly the grade 1 riders, which is a walk test, and so there's 5 grades within the powers now. Grade 5 is the most able, I suppose. Grade 1's the least able. So grade 1s have a walk test. Grade 5s are about advanced medium test. And so there's everything in between for the other ones. And I think the thing with the power riders now is obviously that it is critical that the horses move extremely well, but the horses also then have to have the challenge of having on the whole a non-symmetrical rider, and so that can add challenges to the horse, and obviously has challenges for the rider and how they ride them. So my main interest in that, I actually have groomed for one of the grade 5 Irish power riders, and also go out and when they're competing go out to the various things like WEC and that to treat them. I think those horses are amazing, as are the people that ride them. I'm just blown away every time I see them. I think what we have to understand with the horses seem to know what their job and role is, and they do amazing things with them. So what did you? Is there anything else?
I think the main point I wanted to then touch on from that perspective was, like you say, the symmetry thing, because we've got the power riders. They are physically, some of them physically are. There is no way in earth they can be symmetrical. The riders, there's not. So as you say, that brings its own issues for the horses, for the riders themselves. Who I totally agree.
The saddle fitters. How do you fit a saddle fitter for somebody that's only got half a leg?
I mean, the whole thing is incredible. And like you say, I think the people that the riders are phenomenal. You know, they really are, and the horses, like you say, they are just incredible. But I think it's interesting, you know, the idea that the symmetry is one of the big issues that goes with it. Of we need the horses to be able to move as evenly as possible, while a rider on their back is possibly not going to move as evenly. And I just think for those of us who have got more of a, and there are still, you know, able-bodied people who have old injuries, etc., which I know make people not able to be totally symmetrical. Well, no one's totally symmetrical. No one is ever going to be totally symmetrical. But as a rider who has the capabilities of being reasonably symmetrical, of taking some sort of care of your own body and how you move, how much of a responsibility do you think it is as a rider to make sure that they are not the power riders, that they are in the best shape they can be, symmetry wise, movement wise, how they move, to help their horses' backs? How much of a difference do you think that really makes? And especially having worked with those power horses who have got to cope, for want of a better way of putting it, I suppose, with a rider who isn't necessarily always going to be in the ideal position. Or,
well, I think if you've got a body that you can get working as well as possible, you should do, and that's what the power riders do as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So whether they've got an amputee or they've got reduced movement in a particular joint and everything, they work their way around it, and they find the best thing. If we've all got injuries, I've got injuries as well. I know I'm very different one side to the other, but I have regular treatments to make sure that I'm as symmetrical as I can. I just wanted to say something. If you get a chance, there's a grade 1 rider called Snickers. If you actually watch him ride, so he gets the horse moving so beautifully and walk, it is incredible what he can do. Actually, if you can get on to and see his grade 1 tests, and that he can hardly walk, and that he is so shaky and unstable, but he can ride a bike. He cycles everywhere, and that, which is just incredible. And then he sits on the horse, and I think because he's got so much movement within his body, he allows the horse to be completely able to move underneath it. And I think that some of our thing is that we're not symmetrical, but some of it is that we hold so much tension that we actually don't ride the horse, we sit on it. And we're not meant to be sitting on the horse. It's not an armchair, and that it's, we should be part of it. We should be moving with it. We should understand how it's moving. Then their asymmetries and our asymmetries, we should be able to address both of those together, so that, we're one being, so to say, two hearts, as they say.
Yeah, indeed. And do you know what I love there is you said exactly how I say it, is moving with the horse. There's one of my least favourite phrases, and I've probably said it at some point in the past, don't get me wrong, but one of my least favourite phrases is following the movement of the horse. Because if you're following it, you're behind it.
You're behind it. Yeah. It's not like somebody's not like saying, no, you sit on a horse. And I went, well, technically, no, you sort of stand on it and you're part of it. You're walking along with the horse.
And actually, you're probably not wrong. Those riders who are working entirely in walk, their walk is their main focus. I mean, how often is the walk in a dressage test someone's real letdown? Even that double up, free walk on a long rein, it's God,
throw away those points.
So actually watching people whose speciality in essence is a walk test is probably not a bad place to see what they can walk do, actually,
and see how those horses do. And I mean, the horse that Michael Murphy, who's the Irish rider, our Irish grade 1 rider, rides, I mean, that used to compete at very high level dressage, and that he competed at WEC, and that horse is doing walk tests, and that it's got an amazing walk. That's a huge advantage, but it's still, at the end of the day, is that horse is learned and been taught how to walk like that for Michael as well. It walks with Michael walks with that horse, and that's amazing to watch.
You can teach the horse as much as you like. If the rider then doesn't move with it, the horse won't move like that. We know that. We've all seen horses that have started with great movement or started doing something a certain way, and then if there's no movement for the rider, if the rider restricts them in some way, whether that's through the seat, the elbow, the leg, whatever, the arm, whatever, that can have a huge impact on how that horse then. I mean, we've all seen them in the field, haven't we? Like doing this big, flashy, extended trot, and then you see it moving the fit in the school and think, I'm sorry, is that the same horse? Like, I don't know.
Or just even, you know, walking on your own horse and just sort of like tensing up or not, or, you know,
Yeah.
thinking about something else rather than thinking about what's going on underneath you. Notice how different they move.
No, it's a really good point, actually. And I've, you know, something I'm a real advocate for at the moment as well, is we talk a lot about, you know, what the aids are that the horse has to be able to do it off these aids. And we do have to have, you know, the inside rein means this, the outside rein means that. We have to have a bit of a plan for what that all is. But actually, sometimes you're a bit like with the modalities, with working with how does the horse react to it? You know, how does the horse react when you put your outside leg back? Because it might be that we ideally want to put our outside leg back to here to canter, but actually, if you've got a horse that's a bit more sensitive there, you might not want it to go quite so far back on that horse. And, you know, you can then start to play a little bit exactly that with how does your horse react to your aid? Where does it move? How does it move away from your leg? And as you said, you know, teaching things on the ground is so much easier than teaching it on their back. If you haven't taught your horse to move away to the side from the ground, you go ask it to leg yield, it's going to find that very difficult to compute that just from you putting a leg on, which previously has meant go, that now you suddenly want it to mean go sideways. Yeah. Whereas if you taught it kind of over and a bit of, you know, a bit of pressure on the rib cage or wherever to move its various body parts around, then all of a sudden you're going to have a horse that has that knowledge, but also has learnt to articulate its joints in that direction.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, reinback's the typical one. Just watching any dressage test, reinback's not hard for a horse, and that unless they have particular issues, which can be addressed, and that. But reinback shouldn't be. But how many horses don't reinback in a test correctly? They don't. You know, they don't go in diagonal pairs. They don't. They, you know, the rider can't count. The horse gets that. I was at London Foil and that, watching the first day's dressage, and it's just like, you know, these are the top horses in the world that have been invited here. Several of them can't reinback. They can do amazing canter pirouettes, all of them, but it's like they should be able to do reinback as well. It shouldn't be such a tense issue.
Yeah, not missing the basics. But yeah, and I think it is an interesting point though, isn't it, about, you know, rider symmetry and just riders taking, just to go back to that previous point, riders taking a bit more responsibility for how their bodies are, so that they can be more flexible, be more flexible. And it's like we were saying with the horses, you know, one thing is not enough. Just doing the body work and then carrying on as normal isn't enough. Just, you know, riding them correctly isn't enough if then their posture is rubbish all day because of how they're kept. It has to be multifaceted. The approach has to, and the same with riders and with horses, it has to be multifaceted. We have to look at building the strength and the conditioning and the endurance alongside the mobility, the flexibility, and, you know, and also the relaxation, you know, the ability for them to concentrate on us. And I think if we as riders aren't doing all of that for ourselves, then we're probably going to struggle to then plug that into the horses as well and get them moving in that way. But yeah, no, I think it's like I said, I think people get, the reason I wanted to talk to you is I just think people get so bamboozled by the whole thing. They get so kind of confused by what body workers do, by what modality they should use, by what each person does, and people will throw loads of scientific words or like long words at them and try and say that they're the best thing. And I think riders, owners, carers of horses being able to take a bit more responsibility, I suppose, for their horses, because they understand more what they need and what it's all about, can only be a good thing. You know, they're having that understanding. And on that note, I'm going to advertise this properly. I know we haven't got dates for this, but Jin is going to come and do a series of lectures in the new year. We haven't planned dates yet. It will all go in here, don't worry. I will advertise it all once we sort it properly. So, which is basically going to be a series of lectures involving kind of anatomy and physiology, isn't it, of the horse, really, ultimately?
Yeah, anatomy and biomechanics. So we do the bones, we do the bones one, muscles another, and soft tissue, and then all the other bits, and then hopefully a dissection.
Hopefully a dissection. We need to sweet talk the local hunt for that. But yeah, we're hoping we should get us to a dissection somewhere. So I'll get all that advertised. But I just think, and I just think okay, so anecdotally, a client of mine was feeling down their horse's neck, for instance, a couple of years ago, and he's like, "Oh, there's yeah, I just got a bit worried because there's some quite hard lumps in the neck. I think, like there's real like tight knots in the muscles. And I was like, oh, okay. Show me what you mean. Show me what you mean. And he's like, yeah, just here. I was like, actually the vertebra in the neck. That's the cervical vertebra. They sit all the way down there. Yeah, that's where they sit.
Yeah, those are the bits you're turning.
And you think, yeah, okay, maybe don't massage those because it's probably going to get a bit sore for the horse if you press on those too much. And
perhaps learn some anatomy.
Yeah, totally get it. And I think it's so easy to not necessarily be aware of what's going on underneath you, to not understand how everything attaches. And I think for people, if they can understand what moves where, how the shoulder blades move as they're walking, to understand why it's so important that the saddle sits where it sits and is out the way, how the back lifts and moves when they're working. Again, the importance of why a well-fitting saddle is important, how all the limbs are articulating and how the horse is connected. I genuinely think if people had a better understanding of that, then when I'm coaching, for instance, and I say, right, what I want you to imagine is, so for instance, for a lot of people recently, I've said, it's not just about the neck being, the head being down, for instance, it's actually, we want the chest to feel like it lifts or whatever the cue might be. And it's amazing how just changing what you get a rider to think about can help that a little bit and can actually, without them really changing this, without changing what the aid is or what they're doing, but just kind of going, okay, you kind of did the right thing, but I want you to imagine that this is what the horse then does. And how often that makes the rider just change how they sit a little bit without me having to go, lift this seat bone here or put that leg there or do this with that hand. They just kind of go, oh, okay, if I want to control that, they intuitively do often get to the right place and the horse suddenly changes its balance. You're like, there we have it. So if people actually understood a bit more about where the muscles are, where the bones are, how they're working, when I say things like that and cue them with those things of what we want the horse to do, I think people are going to get to be much more intuitive riders of where they then put themselves and how, and how they work there. So, I definitely think it's a good thing. And I loved when I learned about anatomy properly. I think my favourite thing to explain to people is that horses basically stand on their middle fingers. I love that. I love that fact. I love the fact that horses basically stand on their middle fingers and their middle toes. When people actually start,
and that their front legs aren't joined to their skeleton.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. And I think when people start to understand that, I think even though we know that the fetlock isn't really the ankle, like lots of people know the fetlock isn't really the ankle, but because it's kind of the joint nearest their foot, it's their ankle joint. It's like, no, that's not their ankle joint. Not in terms of human anatomy, that's not their ankle joint. And I just think it's quite interesting, for people to actually really understand that and how the joints then work and to realise how, sometimes how it is comparable to a human. Because I think it can be helpful sometimes to think about how you work and then how the horse works. I know there are some massive differences between us, but there are some huge similarities as well in terms of how our muscles link. And I quite often do it. I say, like, if you tighten the base of your neck and you do that with the base of your neck, what happens at the bottom of your back? The whole of the lumbar region tightens. What happens to a horse when they tighten the base of their neck and they lift up and get all, guess what? Their lumbar region gets tight, it's so sometimes those little things where you can make the comparisons are quite useful. But yeah, so anything else do you think we've missed out today that would be very helpful for people that I think we've
No, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any
questions. I know Mags is there. If you've got any questions, I know you had a question, Mags, so I can unmute you for a second, just on the off chance, if you are still around. I don't know if she's still there. But if you've got any questions, I know you had a question, so hopefully that's answered your question, Mags, about the different modalities and what they all do. And obviously, anyone watching this back, feel free to comment below. You can tag Jin in it, probably. I should assume you can still tag people on the group. I think you can, or me, and I can get the questions to Jin if it's stuff I can't answer. Always happy to answer any more questions afterwards. Or if you've got any questions about, as I say, the lecture series, let me know. Or if you're interested, let me know, and I'll make sure that you definitely see all the info about that, which should be good in the new year. I'm looking forward to that. And I think we're going to stop now before both Jin and I lose our voices, because I've got very nasal again.
Okay.
That's
been great. Thanks, Gemma.
No, thank you very much. It's been great. Nice to speak to you. And we'll see you. Yeah. Well, we'll hope to do
See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.
Bye.
Stop looking at it. Yes.